The Path of Freedom, Vimutti Magga, of Arahant Upatissa, published by the Buddhist Publication Society, Sri Lanka. Salutation, homage to the Blessed One, the Consummate One, the Supremely Enlightened One. Chapter 8, Entrance into the Subject of Meditation. Section 4, Mindfulness of Respiration. What is mindfulness of respiration? What is the practicing of it? What are its salient characteristic, function, and near cause? What are its benefits? What is the procedure? Inhalation is the incoming breath. Exhalation is the outgoing breath. The perceiving of the incoming breath and the outgoing breath. This is being mindful, mindfulness, and right mindfulness. The undisturbed dwelling of the mind in this mindfulness is the practicing of it, to cause the arising of perception as regards respiration is a salient characteristic. Attending to contact is its function. Removal of discursive thought is its near cause. Benefits. What are its benefits? If a man practices mindfulness of respiration, he attains to the peacefulness, the exquisite, the lovely, and the blissful life. He causes evil and demeritory states to disappear and to perish as soon as they arise. He is not negligent as regards his body or his organ of sight. His body and mind do not waver or tremble. He fulfills the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 7 enlightenment factors and freedom. This has been praised by the Blessed One. This is the abode of the Noble Ones, of Brahma, and of the Tathagata. Procedure. What is the procedure? The new yogin, having gone to a forest, to the foot of a tree, or to a wide open space, sits down, with legs crossed under him, with the body held erect, with mindfulness established in front. He is mindful in respiration, mindful of the outgoing breath. That yogin knows when he breathes out a long breath. I breathed out a long breath. When he breathes in a long breath, he knows I breathed in a long breath. When he breathes in a short breath, he knows I breathe in a short breath. When he breathes out a short breath, he knows I breathed out a short breath. Thus he knows I'm breathing in such and such a way. Thus he trains himself. I'm breathing out in such and such a way. Thus he trains himself. Experiencing the whole body, calming the bodily formations, experiencing joy, experiencing bliss, experiencing the mental formations, calming the mental formations, experiencing the mind, gladdening the mind, concentrating the mind, freeing the mind, discerning impermanence, discerning dispassion, discerning cessation, discerning renunciation. Thus he trains himself. Discerning renunciation. I breathe out in such and such a way. Thus he trains himself. Discerning renunciation. I breathe in such and such a way. Thus he trains himself. Here he trains himself in breathing in, means mindfulness is fixed at the nose tip or on the lip. These are the places connected with breathing in and breathing out. That yogin attends to the incoming breath here. He considers the contact of the incoming and outgoing breath through mindfulness that is fixed at the nose tip or on the lip. Mindfully, he breathes in. Mindfully, he breathes out. He does not consider the breath when it has gone in, and also when it has gone out. He considers the contact of the incoming breath and the outgoing breath at the nose tip or on the lip with mindfulness. He breathes in and breathes out with mindfulness. It is as if a man was sawing wood. That man does not attend to the going back and forth of the saw. In the same way, the yogin does not attend to the perception of the incoming and the outgoing breath in mindfulness of respiration. He is aware of the contact at the nose tip or on the lip, and he breathes in and out with mindfulness. If, when the breath comes in or goes out, the yogin considers the inner or the outer, his mind will be distracted. If his mind is distracted, his body and mind will waver and tremble. These are the disadvantages. He should not purposely breathe very long or very short breaths. If he purposely breathes very long or very short breaths, his mind will be distracted, and his body and mind will waver and tremble. These are the disadvantages. He should not attach himself to diverse perceptions connected with breathing in and breathing out. If he does so, his other mental factors will be disturbed. If his mind is disturbed, his body and mind will waver and tremble. Thus countless impediments arise because the points of contact of the incoming breath and the outgoing breath are countless. He should be mindful and should not let the mind be distracted. He should not essay too strenuously nor too laxly. If he essays too laxly, he will fall into rigidity and torpor. If he essays too strenuously, he will become restless. If the yogin falls into rigidity and torpor or becomes restless, his body and mind will waver and tremble. These are the disadvantages. To the yogin who attends to the incoming breath with mind that is cleansed of the 9 lesser defilements, the image arises with a pleasant feeling similar to that which is produced in the action of spinning cotton or silk cotton. Also, it is likened to the pleasant feeling produced by a breeze. Thus, in breathing in and out, air touches the nose or the lip and causes the setting up of air perception, mindfulness. This does not depend on color or form. This is called the image. If the yogin develops the image and increases it at the nose tip, between the eyebrows, on the forehead, or establishes it in several places, he feels as if his head were filled with air. Through increasing in this way, his whole body is charged with bliss. This is called perfection. And again there is a yogin. He sees several images from the beginning. He sees various forms such as smoke, mist, dust, sand of gold, or he experiences something similar to the prickling of a needle or to an ant's bite. If his mind does not become clear regarding these different images, he'll be confused. Thus he fulfills overturning and does not gain the perception of respiration. If his mind becomes clear, the yogin does not experience confusion. He attends to respiration, and he does not cause the arising of other perceptions. Meditating thus, he is able to end confusion and acquire the subtle image, and he attends to respiration with mind that is free. That image is free. Because that image is free, desire arises. Desire being free, that yogin attends to respiration and becomes joyful. Desire and joy being free, He attends to respiration with equipoise. Equipoise, desire and joy being free. He attends to respiration, and his mind is not disturbed. If his mind is not disturbed, he will destroy the hindrances and arouse the meditation jhana factors. Thus this yogin will reach the calm and sublime fourth meditation jhana. This is as was fully taught above. Counting, connection, contacting, and fixing. And again certain predecessors taught 4 ways of practicing mindfulness of respiration. They are counting, connection, contacting, and fixing. What is counting? A new yogin counts the breaths from 1 to 10, beginning with the outgoing breath and ending with the incoming breath. He does not count beyond 10. Again, it is taught that he counts from 1 to 5, but does not count beyond 5. He does not miss. At that time, that is when he misses, he should count the next or stop that count. Thus he dwells in mindfulness of respiration, attending to the object. Thus should counting be understood. Connection. Having counted, he follows respiration with mindfulness continuously. This is called connection. Contacting. Having caused the arising of air perception, he dwells, attending to the contact of respiration at the nose tip or on the lip. This is called contacting. Fixing. Having acquired facility in contacting, he should establish the image, and he should establish joy and bliss and other states which arise here. Thus should fixing be known. That counting suppresses uncertainty. It causes the abandoning of uncertainty. Connection removes gross discursive thinking and causes unbroken mindfulness of respiration. Contacting removes distraction and makes for steady perception. One attains to distinction through bliss. 16 ways of training in mindfulness of respiration. 1 and 2. Breathing in a long breath, breathing out a short breath. Breathing in a short breath, thus he trains himself. Knowledge causes the arising of non-confusion and the object. Question: what is non-confusion and what is the object? The new yogin gains tranquility of body and mind and abides in mindfulness of respiration. The respirations become subtle. Because of subtlety, they are hard to lay hold of. If at that time the yogin's breathing is long, he, through fixing, knows it is long. If the image arises, he considers it through his own nature. Thus should non-confusion be known. And again he should consider the breaths, whether long or short, as the case may be. Thus should he practice. And again the yogin causes the arising of the clear image through the object. Thus should one practice. 3. Experiencing the whole body. I breathe in. Thus he trains himself. In 2 ways he knows the whole body, through non-confusion and through the object. Question: what is the knowledge of the whole body through non-confusion? A new yogin practices mindfulness of respiration and develops concentration through contact accompanied by joy and bliss. Owing to the experiencing of contact accompanied by joy and bliss, the whole body becomes non-confused. What is the knowledge of the whole body through the object? The incoming breath and the outgoing breath comprise the bodily factors dwelling in one sphere, the object of respiration, and the mind and the mental properties are called body. These bodily factors are called body. Thus should the whole body be known. That yogin knows the whole body thus, though there is the body, there is no being or soul. The three trainings. Thus he trains himself refers to the three trainings. The first is the training of the higher virtue. The second is the training of the higher thought. The third is the training of the higher wisdom. True virtue is called the training of the higher virtue. Through concentration is called the training of the higher thought. And true wisdom is called the training of the higher wisdom. That yogin, by these three kinds of training, meditates on the object, recollects the object, and trains himself. He practices repeatedly. This is the meaning of thus he trains himself. 4. Calming the bodily formations. I breathe. Thus he trains himself. Which are the bodily formations? He breathes in and out with such bodily formations as bending down, stooping, bending all over, bending forward, moving, quivering, trembling, and shaking. And again he calms the gross bodily formations and practices the first meditation through the subtle bodily formations. From there, he progresses to the second meditation, jhana, through the more subtle bodily formations. From there, he progresses to the third meditation, jhana, through the still more subtle bodily formations. From there, he progresses to the fourth meditation, having ended the bodily formations without remainder. Question. If he causes the ending of respiration without remainder, how is he able to practice mindfulness of respiration? Because he has grasped well the general characteristics, the image arises even when the respiration lapses, and because of these many characteristics, he is able to develop the image and enter into meditation, jhana. 5. Experiencing joy through the object, I breathe in. Thus he trains himself. He attends to respiration. He arouses joy in two meditations, jhanas. This joy can be known through two ways, through non-confusion and through the object. Here the yogin enters into concentration and experiences joy through non-confusion, through investigation, through overcoming, and through the object. 6. Experiencing bliss, I breathe in. Thus he trains himself. He attends to respiration. He arouses bliss in three meditations, jhanas. This bliss can be known through two ways, through non-confusion and through the object. The rest is as was fully taught above. 7. Experiencing the mental formations, I breathe in. Thus he trains himself. Mental formations means perception and feeling. He arouses these mental formations in 4 meditations, jhanas. He knows through two ways, through non-confusion and through the object. The rest is as was fully taught above. 8. Calming the mental formations, I breathe in. Thus he trains himself. The mental formations are called perception and feeling. He calms the gross mental formations and trains himself. The rest is as was fully taught above. 9. Experiencing the mind, I breathe in. Thus he trains himself. He attends to the incoming breath and the outgoing breath. The mind is aware of entering into and going out of the object through two ways, through non-confusion and through the object. The rest is as was fully taught above. 10. Gladdening the mind, I breathe in. Thus he trains himself. Joy means rejoicing. In two meditations, jhanas, he causes the mind to exalt. Thus he trains himself. The rest is as was fully taught above. 11. Concentrating the mind, I breathe in. Thus he trains himself. That yogin attends to the incoming breath and outgoing breath. Through mindfulness and through meditation, jhana, he causes the mind to be intent on the object. Placing the mind well, he establishes it. Thus he trains himself. 12. Freeing the mind, I breathe in. Thus he trains himself. That yogin attends to the incoming breath and outgoing breath. If his mind is slow and slack, he frees it from rigidity. If it is too active, he frees it from restlessness. Thus he trains himself. If his mind is elated, he frees it from lust. Thus he trains himself. If it is depressed, he frees it from hatred. Thus he trains himself. If his mind is sullied, he frees it from the lesser defilements. Thus he trains himself. And again, if his mind is not inclined towards the object and is not pleased with it, he causes his mind to be inclined towards it. Thus he trains himself. 13. Discerning impermanence, I breathe in. Thus he trains himself. He attends to the incoming breath and the outgoing breath, discerning the incoming and the outgoing breath, the object of the incoming and the outgoing breath, the mind and the mental properties and their arising and passing away. He trains himself. 14. Discerning dispassion, I breathe in. Thus he trains himself. He attends to the incoming breath and the outgoing breath, thinking, thus, this is impermanence, this is dispassion, this is extinction, this is nibbana. Thus he breathes in and trains himself. 15. Discerning cessation, I breathe in. Thus he trains himself. Discerning many hindrances according to reality, he thinks these are impermanent. The destruction of these is extinction, nibbana. Thus with tranquilized vision, he trains himself. 16. Discerning renunciation, I breathe in. Thus he trains himself. Discerning tribulation according to reality, he thinks these are impermanent, and freeing himself from tribulation, he abides in the peace of extinction, nibbana. Thus he trains himself and attains to bliss. The tranquil and the sublime are to be understood thus. All activities are brought to rest. All defilements are forsaken. Craving is destroyed. Passion is absent. It is the peace of blowing out. Of these 16, the first 12 fulfill serenity and insight and are discerned as impermanence. The last 4 fulfill only insight. Thus should serenity and insight be understood. And again, all these are of 4 kinds. The first is that practice which leads to the completion of discernment. There is a time when one discerns impermanence through attending to the incoming breath and the outgoing breath. This is called the knowledge of the long and the short through practicing. Calming the bodily formations and the mental formations, gladdening the mind, concentrating the mind, and freeing the mind. This is called the arising of the knowledge of the whole body, bliss, and the mental formations. Experiencing the mind means the completion of discernment. There is a time when one discerns, and so forth refers to the 4 activities which always begin with the discernment of impermanence. And again, practice means attaining to a state of meditation, jhana, through mindfulness of respiration. This is practice. Through this mindfulness of respiration, one attains to the state which is without even initial application of thought. That is the state which is with initial and sustained application of thought, and the state of sustained application of thought. The experiencing of joy is a state of the 2nd meditation, jhana. The experiencing of bliss is the state of the 3rd meditation, jhana. The experiencing of the mind is the state of the 4th meditation, jhana. And again, all these are of 2 kinds. They are practice and fulfillment. Such practice as is included within fulfillment does not cause decrease of the 16 bases. Practice is like a seed. It is the cause of merit. Fulfillment is like a flower or a fruit, because it proceeds from a similar thing. If mindfulness of respiration is practice, the 4 foundations of mindfulness are fulfilled. If the 4 foundations of mindfulness are practice, the 7 enlightenment factors are fulfilled. If the 7 enlightenment factors are practice, freedom and wisdom are fulfilled. The 4 foundations of mindfulness. How is such a state attained? The foundation of mindfulness, which begins with the long incoming breath and the long outgoing breath, is the reviewing of the body. That which begins with the experiencing of joy is the reviewing of feeling. That which begins with the experiencing of the mind is the reviewing of thought. That which begins with the discernment of impermanence is the reviewing of states. Thus, one who practices mindfulness of respiration fulfills the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The 7 enlightenment factors. How are the 7 enlightenment factors fulfilled? Through the practice of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. If the yogin practices the 4 foundations of mindfulness, he is able to abide non-confused in mindfulness. This is called the enlightenment factor of mindfulness. That yogin, abiding in mindfulness, investigates subjection to ill, impermanence and phenomena. This is called the enlightenment factor of inquiry into states. Inquiring into states, Dhamma, thus, he strives earnestly without slackening. This is called the enlightenment factor of exertion. Developing exertion, he arouses joy that is clean. This is called the enlightenment factor of joy. Through the mind being full of joy, his body and mind are endowed with calm. This is called the enlightenment factor of calm. Through calmness, his body attains to ease, and his mind is possessed of concentration. This is called the enlightenment factor of concentration. Owing to concentration, the mind acquires equanimity. This is called the enlightenment factor of equanimity. Thus, because of the practice of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 7 enlightenment factors are fulfilled. How are freedom and wisdom fulfilled? Through the practice of the 7 enlightenment factors. The yogin, who has practiced the 7 enlightenment factors much, gains in the moment the wisdom of the path and the fruit of freedom. Thus, because of the practice of the 7 enlightenment factors, wisdom and freedom are fulfilled. All formations are endowed with initial and sustained application of thought according to planes. That being so, why is only initial application of thought suppressed in mindfulness of respiration and not the other? It is used here in a different sense. Discursiveness is a hindrance to meditation jhana. In this sense, it is suppressed. Why is eye contact pleasant? Because it calms the mind. It is comparable to the soothing of a heavenly musician's Gandharva's mind with sweet sounds. By this discursive thinking is suppressed. And again it is like a person walking along the bank of a river. His mind is collected, is directed towards one object, and does not wander. Therefore, in mindfulness of respiration, the suppression of discursive thinking is taught. Mindfulness of respiration has ended. Mindfulness of body. What is mindfulness of body? What is the practicing of it? What are its salient characteristics and functions? What are its benefits? What is the procedure? Mindfulness as regards the nature of the body is the practicing of it. That mindfulness is mindfulness and right mindfulness. Thus is mindfulness of body to be understood. The undisturbed dwelling of the mind in this mindfulness is the practicing of it. The becoming manifest of the nature of the body is a salient characteristic. The perception of disagreeableness is its function. The indication of the unreal is its manifestation. What are its benefits? A man who practices mindfulness of body can endure. He can bear to see the fearful, and he can bear heat, cold, and the like. He is endowed with the perception of impermanence, the perception of not self, the perception of impurity, and the perception of tribulation. He attains to the four meditations, jhanas, gains a clear view of things, is pleased with his practice, fares well, and approaches the embroiderer. What is the procedure? The new yogin enters a place of solitude, sits down and guards his thoughts. With mind undisturbed, he meditates on the nature of his body. How does he practice mindfulness of body? 32 parts of the body. This body consists of head hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, marrow, kidneys, liver, heart, spleen, lungs, bile, gorge, grease, fat, brain, midriff, intestines, mesentery, excrement, urine, pus, blood, phlegm, sweat, synovial fluid, tears, nasal mucus, saliva, and is impure. The new yogin at first should recite vocally these 32 parts of the body in the direct and in the reverse order. He should always vocally recite well and investigate these 32 parts. Vocally reciting well, he should investigate always. Thereafter, he should reflect on them only mentally in these 4 ways: through color, through the formations, the form, the basis. He may, with discrimination, take 1 or 2 or more and grasp the crude sign. Thus a yogin is able to cause the manifestation of 3 trends of thought, namely of color, of disliking, and of space. When the yogin causes the rising of the sign through color, he is able to meditate with facility through the color kasina. When he causes the rising of the sign through disliking, he is able to meditate with facility on impurity. When the yogin causes the rising of the sign through space, he is able to meditate with facility on the elements. If the yogin practices on the kasinas, he will get to the fourth meditation, jhana. If the yogin practices on impurity, he will get to the first meditation, jhana. If he practices on the elements, he will get to assess concentration. Here a walker in hate causes the manifestation of the sign through color, a walker in passion through disliking, and a walker in wisdom through the elements. And again a walker in hate should meditate through color, a walker in passion through disliking, and a walker in wisdom through the elements. Mindfulness in 13 ways. And again one should recall to mind the nature of the body through 13 ways, through seed, place, condition, oozing, gradual formation, worms, connection, assemblage, loathsomeness, impurity, dependence, non-awareness of obligation, finitude. How should a man reflect on the nature of the body through seed? As Iliana's pageants, Kosataki, and the like burn, so this body produced from the impure seed of parents also burns. This is impure. Thus one should recall the mind, the nature of the body through seed. How should one reflect on the nature of the body through place? This body does not come out of Upala, Kumuda, or Pundarika. This comes out of the place where impurity, malodor, and uncleanness are pressed together. This body lies across the womb, from left to right. It leans against the backbone of the mother, wrapped in the core. This place is impure, therefore the body is also impure. Thus should one recall the nature of the body through place. How should one reflect on the nature of the body through condition? This body is not fed with gold, silver, or gems. It does not grow up through being fed with chandana, tagara, aloes wood, and the like. This body grows in the womb of the mother and is mixed with nasal mucus, saliva, slobber, and the tears which the mother swallows. This body is nourished with foul-smelling food and drink produced in the mother's womb, rice, milk, beans, nasal mucus, saliva, slobber, and phlegm, which are swallowed by the mother, form part of this body. On malodorous, filthy fluid is this brought up. Thus should one recall to mind the nature of the body through condition. How should one reflect on the nature of the body through oozing? This body is like a bag of skin with many holes exuding filth and urine. This body is filled with filth and urine. This body is a conglomeration of drink and food taken in, of nasal mucus, saliva, filth, and urine. These various impurities ooze from the 9 openings. Thus should one recall to mind the nature of the body through oozing. How should one reflect on the nature of the body through gradual formation? This body gradually forms itself according to its previous karma. In the first week, the kalala is formed. In the second week, the abuda is formed. In the third week, the pesi is formed. In the fourth week, the ghana is formed. In the fifth week, 5 parts are formed. In the sixth week, 4 parts are formed. In the seventh week again, 4 parts are formed. In the 8th week again, 28 parts are formed. In the 9th and 10th weeks, the backbone is formed. In the 11th week, 300 bones are formed. In the 12th week, 800 parts are formed. In the 13th week, 900 parts are formed. In the 14th week, 100 lumps of flesh are formed. In the 15th week, blood is formed. In the 16th week, the midriff is formed. In the 17th week, the skin is formed. In the 18th week, the color of the skin is formed. In the 19th week, the wind, according to karma, fills the body. In the 20th week, the 9 orifices are formed. In the 25th week, the 17,000 textures of the skin are formed. In the 26th week, the body is endowed with hardness. In the 27th week, the body is endowed with the powers. In the 28th week, the 99,000 pores are produced. In the 29th week, the whole is completed. And again it is taught that in the 7th week, the child's body is complete, that it leans back with hanging head in a crouching position. In the 42nd week, by the aid of the karma-produced wind, it reverses its position, turns its feet upwards and its head down, and goes to the gate of birth. At this time it is born. In the world, it is commonly known as a being. Thus one should reflect on the nature of the body through gradual formation. The worms that rely on the body. How should one reflect on the nature of the body through worms? This body is gnawed by 80,000 worms. The worm that relies on the hair is called hair iron. The worm that relies on the scalp is called swollen ear. The worm that relies on the brain is called maddener. In this class, there are 4 kinds. The first is called ukurimba. The second is called shibara. The third is called daraka. The fourth is called dakashira. The worm that relies on the eye is called eye liquor. The worm that relies on ear is called ear liquor. The worm that relies on the nose is called nose liquor. There are 3 kinds here. The first is called rukamuka. The second is called aruka. The third is called manurumuka. The worm that relies on the tongue is called mukha. The worm that relies on the root of the tongue is called motanta. The worm that relies on the teeth is called kuba. The worm that relies on the roots of the teeth is called ubakuba. The worm that relies on the throat is called abasaka. The worms that rely on the neck are of 2 kinds. The first is called rokara. The second is called virokara. The worm that relies on the hair of the body is called body hair liquor. The worm that relies on the nails is called nail liquor. The worms that rely on the skin are of 2 kinds. The first is called tuna. The second is called tunanda. The worms that rely on the midriff are of 2 kinds. The first is called viramba. The second is called maviramba. The worms that rely on the flesh are of 2 kinds. The first is called araba. The second is called raba. The worms that rely on the blood are of 2 kinds. The first is called bara. The second is called badara. The worms that rely on the tendons are of 4 kinds. The first is called rotara. The second is called kitaba. The third is called baravatara. The fourth is called rana varana. The worm that relies on the veins is called karikuna. The worms that rely on the roots of the vein are of 2 kinds. The first is called sivara. The second is called ubasisira. The worms that rely on the bones are of 4 kinds. The first is called kachibida. The second is called anabida. The third is called chiridabida. The fourth is called kachigokara. The worms that rely on the marrow are of 2 kinds. The first is called Bisha. The second is called Bishashira. The worms that rely on the spleen are of two kinds. The first is called Nira. The second is called Beta. The worms that rely on the heart are of two kinds. The first is called Sibita. The second is called Ubadabita. The worms that rely on the root of the heart are of two kinds. The first is called Manka. The second is called Sira. The worms that rely on the fat are of two kinds. The first is called Kara. The second is called Karasira. The worms that rely on the bladder are of two kinds. The first is called Bikara. The second is called Mahakara. The worms that rely on the root of the bladder are of two kinds. The first is called Kara. The second is called Karasira. The worms that rely on the belly are of two kinds. The first is called Rata. The second is called Maharata. The worms that rely on the mesentery are of two kinds. The first is called Sorata. The second is called Maharata. The worms that rely on the root of the mesentery are of two kinds. The first is called Siba. The second is called Mahasiba. The worms that rely on the intestines are of two kinds. The first is called Anabaka. The second is called Kababaka. The worms that rely on the stomach are of four kinds. The first is called Ujuka. The second is called Ushaba. The third is called Chishaba. The fourth is called Sanshiba. The worms that rely on the ripened womb are of four kinds. The first is called Vakana. The second is called Mahavakana. The third is called Unaban. The fourth is called Punamaka. The worm that relies on the bile is called Hitosoka. The worm that relies on saliva is called Senka. The worm that relies on sweat is called Sudasaka. The worm that relies on oil is called Jidasaka. The worms that rely on vitality are of two kinds. The first is called Subakama. The second is called Samakita. The worms that rely on the root of vitality are of three kinds. The first is called Sukamuka. The second is called Darukamuka. The third is called Sanamuka. There are five kinds of worms. Those that rely on the front of the body and not the front of the body. Those that rely on the back of the body and not the back of the body. Those that rely on the left side of the body and not the left side of the body. Those that rely on the right side of the body and not the right side of the body. These worms are called Chandasira, Sinkasira, Hakura, and so forth. There are three kinds of worms that rely on the two lower orifices. The first is called Kurukula Yuyu. The second is called Sarayu. The third is called Kandupada. Thus one should recall to mind the nature of the body through worms. How should one reflect on the nature of the body through connection? The shin bone is connected with the foot bone. The shin bone is connected with the thigh bone. The thigh bone is connected with the hip bone. The hip bone is connected with the backbone. The backbone is connected with the shoulder blade. The shoulder blade is connected with the humerus. The humerus is connected with the neck bone. The neck bone is connected with the skull. The skull is connected with the cheekbones. The cheekbones are connected with the teeth. Thus, by the connection of the bones and the covering of the skin, this unclean body is kept in position and is complete. This body is born of karma. Nobody makes it. Thus should one recall the nature of the body through connection. Bones of the body. How should one reflect on the nature of the body through assemblage? There are 9 bones of the head, 2 cheekbones, 32 teeth, 7 neck bones, 14 ribs, 24 side bones, 18 joints of the spine, 2 hip bones, 64 hand bones, 64 foot bones, and 64 soft bones which depend on the flesh. These 300 bones and 8 or 900 tendons are connected with each other. There are 900 muscles, 17,000 textures of the skin, 8 million hairs of the head, 99,000 hairs of the body, 60 interstices, 80,000 worms, bile, saliva, and brain are each a palata in weight. In ryo, this is equal to 4 ryo, and blood is 1 atta in weight. In ryo, this is equal to 3 sho. All these many and varied forms are only a heap of filth, a collection of urine, and are called body. Thus should one recollect on the nature of the body through assemblage. How should one reflect on the nature of the body through loathsomeness? A man esteems purification most. The things which a man holds dear are such means of adorning himself as sweet perfume, unguents and pastes and beautiful clothes, and bedspreads, pillows, mats, and cushions used for sleeping and sitting, bolsters, blankets, canopies, bedding, and various kinds of food and drink, dwelling places, and gifts. A man manifests much attachment to these at first, and afterwards dislikes them. Thus one should reflect on the nature of the body through loathsomeness. Impurity of the body. How should one reflect on the nature of the body through impurity? When clothes and adornments become dirty, they can be made clean again. Their purity can be renewed because their nature is pure, but the body is impure. Thus should one reflect on the nature of the body through impurity. Some diseases. How should one reflect on the nature of the body through dependence? Depending on a pond, flowers are produced. Depending on the garden, fruits are produced. In the same way, depending on this body, various defilements and diseases are produced. Thus ache of the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, head, mouth and teeth, throat ailments, shortness of breath, heat and cold, abdominal ache, heart disease, epilepsy, flatulence, diarrhea and vomiting, leprosy, goiter, vomiting of blood, itch, smallpox, skin disease, ague, contagious diseases, gonorrhea, chills and others give endless trouble to this body. Thus one should reflect on the nature of the body through dependence. How should one reflect on the nature of the body through the non-awareness of obligation? Now a man prepares tasty food and drink and takes them for his body's sake. He bathes and perfumes his body and clothes it with garments for sleeping and sitting. Thus he tends his body. But on the contrary, ungratefully, this body, which is like a poisonous tree, goes to decay, to disease, and to death. The body is like an intimate friend who does not know his obligations. Thus one should reflect on the nature of the body through the non-awareness of obligation. How should one reflect on the nature of the body through finitude? This body will be consumed by fire, or devoured by animals, or go to waste. This body is finite. Thus should one reflect on the nature of the body through finitude. This yogin, through these ways, practices mindfulness of the body. Through the acquisition of facility in mindfulness and wisdom, his mind becomes undisturbed. When his mind is undisturbed, he is able to destroy the hindrances, cause the arising of the meditation jhana factors, and attain to the distinction for which he yearns. Mindfulness of the body has ended. The recollection of peace. What is the recollection of peace? What is the practicing of it? What are its salient, characteristic, function, and near cause? What are its benefits? What is the procedure? Peace is the stilling of the movements of the mind and body. Complete stilling is called peace. One recalls peace to mind well. This is recollectedness, recollection, and right recollectedness. This is called the recollection of peace. The undisturbed dwelling of the mind in this recollection is called the practicing of it. The manifestation of lasting merit is its salient characteristic. Non-restlessness is its function. Sublime freedom is its near cause. What are its benefits? When a man practices the recollection of peace, happily he sleeps, happily he awakes, is endowed with calm. His faculties are tranquil, and he is able to fulfill his aspirations. He is pleasant of mien, modest of demeanor, and is esteemed by others. He fares well and approaches the embrasure. What is the procedure? The new yogin enters into a place of solitude and sits down with mind intent on the recollection of peace and undisturbed. If this bhikkhu calms his faculties, his mind will be quietened, and he will enjoy tranquility immediately. The bhikkhu sees and hears through bodily, verbal, and mental action, through the recollection of peace and through the merits of peace. It is taught by the Blessed One thus, that bhikkhu is endowed with virtue, endowed with concentration, endowed with wisdom, endowed with freedom, and is endowed with the knowledge of freedom. Great, I declare, is the gain. Great is the advantage of one who sees that bhikkhu. Great, I declare, is the advantage of one who hears that bhikkhu. Great, I declare, is the advantage of one who goes near to that bhikkhu. Great, I declare, is the advantage of one who pays homage to the bhikkhu. Great, I declare, is the advantage of one who reflects on that bhikkhu or lives the holy life under him. How is that so? Bhikkhus who listen to the words of that bhikkhu will be able to gain the twofold seclusion, namely that of the body and that of the mind. In the recollection of peace, one recollects that bhikkhu thus. When that bhikkhu entered the first meditation jhana, he destroyed the hindrances. One recollects when he entered the second meditation jhana, he destroyed initial and sustained application of thought. One recollects when he entered the third meditation jhana, he destroyed joy. One recollects when he entered the fourth meditation jhana, he destroyed bliss. One recollects when he entered the sphere of the infinity of space, he destroyed perception of form, perception of sense reaction, and perception of diversity. One recollects when he entered the sphere of the infinity of consciousness, he destroyed space. One recollects when he entered the sphere of nothingness, he destroyed the perception of the sphere of the infinity of consciousness. One recollects when he entered the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception, he destroyed the perception of the sphere of nothingness. One recollects when he entered the state of the dissolution of perception and sensation, he destroyed perception and sensation. One recollects when he attained to the fruit of stream entrance, he destroyed the defilements which are together with views as that of views. One recollects when he attained to the fruit of one's returning, he destroyed cause passion, cause hatred, and cause defilements. One recollects When he attained to the fruit of non-returning, he destroyed fine defilements, fine passion, and fine hate. One recollects, when he attained to the fruit of the consummate one, he destroyed all defilements. And one recollects, when he attains to extinction, nibbana, he destroys everything. Thus, in the recollection of peace, one recalls that bhikkhu to mind. That yogin, in these ways and through these merits, recalls peace to mind and is endowed with confidence. Through being unrestricted in faith, he recollects with ease, is in mind undisturbed. When his mind is undisturbed, he destroys the hindrances, causes the arising of meditation, jhana factors, and attains to access meditation. The recollection of peace has ended. Miscellaneous teachings. The following are the miscellaneous teachings concerning these 10 recollections. One recalls to mind the merits of the Buddhas of the past and the future. This is called the practice of the recollection of the Buddha. In the same way, one recollects on the Pachika Buddhas. If a man recalls to mind one of the doctrines that has been taught, it is called the practice of the recollection of the law. If a man recalls to mind the merits of the life of one hearer, it is called the recollection of the community of bhikkhus. If a man recalls virtue to mind, it is called the practice of the recollection of virtue. If a man recollects liberality, it is called the recollection of liberality. If a man rejoices in the recollection of liberality, he gives to men who are worthy and resolves to make that giving his object. If he is offered food that is not proper to be offered, he should not partake of even a handful of it. The recollection of deities endows one with confidence. There are 5 doctrines. One should practice the recollection of deities.